My name is Daniel Miller, but most people just call me Danny. I grew up in a small town called Ashford, tucked away in the rolling hills of Vermont. My dad owned a little woodworking shop, and when I was old enough, he taught me how to sand, carve, and build things that would outlive both of us. It wasn't fancy work, but it was honest. I liked that. When I first met Emily, I was 25, and she was 23. She'd just moved up from Boston, taking a break from her fast-paced marketing job after a rough breakup. She rented the cabin next to my parents' old house for the summer. I remember the first time I saw her. She was standing on the porch in a yellow sundress, struggling with a stuck window frame. I offered to fix it for her, and when I did, she invited me in for coffee. We sat at her tiny kitchen table for hours, talking about everything and nothing. She told me about growing up in a bustling suburb, her dreams of working in big cities, the places she wanted to see. I told her about my life in Ashford, the smell of cedar in the shop, the lake I'd swim in every summer, the way I liked my coffee black and my mornings quiet. To my surprise, she didn't roll her eyes or call me boring. She smiled, wide and bright. "I love that," she said. "You're so grounded. I need that in my life." That summer felt like magic. We'd go swimming at dawn, drive to the next town for ice cream, lie on the hood of my old truck to watch the stars. I carved her a little wooden jewelry box with her initials, EM, and when I gave it to her, she cried. In the fall, she went back to Boston, but she didn't stay away for long. She'd drive up every other weekend, sometimes bringing fancy pastries or bottles of wine I'd never tasted before. She'd tease me about my old flannel shirts but then curl up in them when she stayed the night. A year later, she moved in with me. We made it work, even though our worlds didn't fit together easily. She started working remotely, still keeping up with her city friends through constant calls and texts. Sometimes she'd drag me to dinners in Boston, where I'd sit awkwardly in expensive restaurants, trying to follow conversations about brands and investments and new restaurants I couldn't pronounce. She'd squeeze my hand under the table, whispering, "Just be yourself, Danny." And I tried. God knows I tried. The proposal was my idea. I carved the ring box myself, of course, a tiny heart-shaped thing made of maple. I saved for 3 months to buy a simple ring with a single diamond. When I knelt by the lake where we'd first watched the sunrise together, she said yes with tears streaming down her face. I thought we were building something real. Something strong enough to bridge the gap between our two worlds. But the cracks started to show as soon as we started planning the wedding. She wanted a grand venue in Boston, with a guest list longer than our town's population. I wanted something small, maybe under the trees in my parents' backyard. She called me quaint. Said it like it was a bad thing. In the end, we did it her way, a fancy old hotel ballroom in the city, chandeliers so bright they gave me a headache. I invited my family and a handful of friends from Ashford. They didn't know which fork to use for the salad, but they wore their best clothes and smiled politely. I spent most of the reception feeling like a stranger. Emily flitted from group to group, dazzling everyone with her stories, her laughter ringing across the marble floors. I watched her from the edge of the dance floor, my drink sweating in my hand. It happened near the end of the night. Her friends from work, all of them dressed in designer suits and cocktail dresses, gathered around her at the bar. I walked over to join them, hoping to feel a part of it all for once. One of them, a guy named Tyler, turned to me. "So, Danny, what's next for you two? You ever think about moving here? Maybe get a real job?" He laughed like it was just a joke, but my stomach tightened. Before I could answer, Emily jumped in, her voice dripping with that playfulness she used when she wanted to feel bigger than the room. "Oh, come on, Tyler. Danny. In the city. He'd get lost without his woods and his little toy shop. He still thinks building rocking chairs makes him some sort of artist." They laughed. God, they all laughed. I looked at her, the woman I just promised my life to, and she was smiling, like it was all harmless fun. But it wasn't harmless. It wasn't funny. Not to me. I left the bar and went out onto the balcony. The city lights spread out below like a sea of stars, so different from the ones I used to watch with her on the hood of my truck. I wondered when she'd stopped loving the simple parts of me. Maybe she never really did. Maybe she loved the story of me, the rugged country boy who made her feel grounded for a while. But stories don't always fit into real life. We tried for a while after the wedding. I moved into her city apartment. I traded my boots for polished shoes, my flannels for shirts with stiff collars. I stopped by my shop on weekends when I could, but every time I came back, she'd wrinkle her nose at the sawdust on my jeans. We fought about little things at first, the way I talked, the way I didn't want to go to fancy dinners, the way I missed the quiet. Then the fights grew bigger. I felt like a guest in my own life, performing for her friends, pretending I was okay when every day made me feel smaller. The night it ended was quiet. No shouting, no slammed doors. Just two people sitting on opposite ends of the couch, realizing they'd both been clinging to an idea that couldn't hold up anymore. She cried, said she was sorry, that she never meant to make me feel small. I believed her. I did. But the words still hurt. They always would. I packed my things and drove back to Ashford that same night. When I pulled up to my old workshop in the dawnlight, I stepped inside and breathed in the scent of pine and varnish. It felt like home. It felt like me. Sometimes I still think of her, of that summer when she first smiled at me across her porch, of the nights we lay under the stars, dreaming of forever. I don't hate her. I can't. She taught me how easy it is to lose yourself when you're trying too hard to fit into someone else's world. Back in Ashford, life is quiet again. The rocking chairs still creak in the same comforting way. The lake still waits for me every summer morning. And when people ask why I never remarried, I just shrug and smile. I guess some people need the city lights, the parties, the noise to feel alive. Me? I just need my hands, my tools, and the promise that simple things can last. But I'll never forget that night, the night she laughed at my simple life in front of her friends. The night I realized love isn't always enough when respect slips away. The night my forever story turned into just another memory, carved into the wood grain of my heart, a lesson that will never fade.